along. Next fight that we have here is the most emotional fight we probably had all night. And we have Paddy Pimblett's unanimous decision win over legend Tony Ferguson. Lots of opinions here, I'm sure, from all angles. Do you want to go first? Because I have some opinions.
I'll go first. I think you're going to hate on it even more than me. I know this fight is catching hate in both directions, and it is justified. Yes, Tony looks unfathomably slow and weak and non-reactive and is just a shell of the guy we once watched terrorizing this division. Them's the facts, unfortunately. And yes, Paddy's striking does still have a ways to go. His chin is still floating out there in the wind. His hooks are still twice as wide as they should be half the time he throws them. But as possibly the resident Paddy non-believer on this show, based on some of my comments when he first came to the UFC, I'm going to choose to defend him a little bit here. He fought pretty well, I thought, and it's still a nice step forward in his career to beat Tony. You know, striking defense aside, he looked to me like he had made some strides offensively. He looked like he had much more of an idea of what he wanted to do, more measured, less wild, more flowing between his strikes and less just like winging and blitzing. I thought he looked better physically. And his grappling, whether people want to admit it or not, is top notch. He dominated Tony on the mat. Tony had no outs, nothing close to an out at any point. So I thought overall it was a pretty solid show from Paddy. And I also love that he came out hunting for the kill. He didn't get it, obviously, because Tony's Tony. But for him having to sit out, recovering from surgery, hearing all the shit talk about the Jared Gordon fight, and then come out real hard the way he did and knock down Tony right away and try to finish that thing, I liked seeing that. I thought that was a good sign for, how the mental side of things for Paddy going forward. Is he still liable to be flatlined by a top shelf striker at some point soon? 100%. But I thought it was a good night for him.
I can't put striking defense aside. I can't. It's to me, it's just as important as striking itself. Congratulations, you can throw a hook. What does it matter if you've gotten knocked out before the hook lands? Defense to me is to me just as important, if not more important. So it bothers the fuck out of me when I see professional fighters throwing hooks worse than dudes who have been training for like 6-7 months. You know what I mean? Like, it's really upsetting. Like, there's no reason you're like, even, we've seen dudes play around with the distance of their hands and kind of where they put them when they're defending and stuff like that. Some dudes aren't always like this, with their tight turtle shells and stuff like that. Paddy's hands are non-existent. He's almost got them like behind his back. Like, I'm so confused as to how this man gets away with this shit in training. How a trainer hasn't like bashed him over the head repeatedly with pads and all kinds of shit to get him to not drop his hands. Like, somebody needs to go in there with a paracord and just wrap his hand around his head to make sure that it doesn't move while he's like, seriously, because look at what happened to Bryce Mitchell, right? Look at what happened to Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett. We're going to get to that in more detail in a little bit. But just look at that. And that was Bryce Mitchell throwing a strike at the same time, let alone Paddy Pimblett, who not only puts his head up in the air like he's trying to smell for fucking pie on somebody's windowsill, but he's also got his hands down at the same time. So, like, none of the defense is there at all. Credit where credit is due. He looked like he was in incredible shape. That was, I think, beyond the best physical form I think we've seen him in. It looks like he's taking that part of his training super seriously. He said he wasn't going to be going through those ballooning moments anymore in between fights. He said he was going to be a lot more diligent about his diet and his physical fitness. Um, I think his ground game is exceptional. You can tell that his top game is very very heavy. He's
Yep.
another one who's very big on position. Um, there are guys who won't sacrifice a potential submission to lose their position there, and I think Paddy kind of has that same kind of approach to the game as well. And he was able to land some strikes from top as well. I thought his ground game is what makes him. I'm pretty sure that's the only thing that's keeping him going at this
Yeah.
point is that elite ground game, because the striking it is not.
Yeah.
I
I mean, the
really
only game
hope.
where he couldn't get the only fight where he couldn't get the ground game going was the Gordon fight, and everyone shitted on him.
Yeah, I really hope that he goes back and he's honest with himself, and he really looks at this performance and he's like, "Damn, somebody's gonna knock me the fuck out if I keep this up." And I hope he doesn't have a bunch of yes men now with his popularity and all this stuff where they're like, "No, Patty, you're good." I really hope like they're being honest with him and they're like, "If you don't put your hands up, they're gonna kill you." Um, it's difficult for me to enjoy a fight like that, especially knowing how good Tony Ferguson has been in the past. To see somebody with as many flaws as Patty on the feet and Tony unable to do a damn thing about it. That was the other super frustrating thing about this fight. The ground game also from Tony looked absolutely horrid. We've seen Tony throw like 15 elbows on the ground within seconds of his back hitting the mat. I think that dude threw like 3 the whole fight
Yeah.
from his back. Like something is missing from that dude. I don't know what it is.
Yep.
Could be age, could be that dog inside of him. You know what I mean? At some point, a lot of these fighters lose that dog. There's no shame in it. Dudes get money. Dudes get comfortable. Dudes aren't. They don't have the same motivation to fight for the same things anymore because their lives have changed for the better. And so there's no shame in that dog leaving you. I understand that it's an identity thing, I'm assuming, and I'm sure guys have trouble reconciling with that. We see guys in there longer than they need to be because it's who they are. And retiring from this sport, retiring from those walks and being inside of that octagon is retiring from a part of who they are. And I can empathize. It seems like it would be difficult to do some shit like that and find something else to do at like 38 or whatever, It's not like the dude's 65 or he can just ride off into the sunset. So
Yep.
I hope he gets something figured out, man. It's just really sad to watch him look so uncomfortable, so uncoordinated, so lost in the octagon all of a sudden. It's inexplicable and it's super difficult to enjoy. So this was not my favorite fight. I was hoping for something more enjoyable as far as competition was concerned and technique, but alas, here we are.
Yes.
All right, where do we go for Paddy Pimblett?
I'm going Bobby King Green. They've both talked about it before. Bobby's coming off a loss. He needs to show that he can turn someone back. It's a buzzworthy fight. People will love that fight. I think he's a perfect next step. Not to mention, while obviously it's a risk for the UFC because of the talent of Bobby Green, it's a little less of a risk than maybe someone like a Matt Frivola or a Drew Dober who are other guys at a similar level, just because Bobby is a little less of a one-shot KO artist.
What? Okay. I'm over here looking at what the height is at UFC.com. What the fuck is this 70 here? Why can't you just put what it is in feet and inches? What is this fucking? What is this? Not what is this? Centimeters? Did they put this shit in centimeters? What is this?
70 is 5'10".
What is what? They didn't even put a fucking metric in here. It just says height 70. What
There's
is
no inch
this?
symbol?
No, no.
That's stupid. Whose height is that?
Bobby Green's.
Mm.
And so, what is? Who the fuck are we talking about? I'm already lost. Paddy Pimblett. Paddy's tall, right? I'm not bugging.
I don't think he's taller than that.
No?
5'10", at least according to Google.
Fuck, he seems tall. I don't know why. I don't know why.
Yeah.
All right, that might be. I mean, that's Paddy better learn how to keep his chin down, man. Just keep your chin down, at least. You can keep your
Yeah.
hands, I guess, wherever you want, but just start with the chin down. You're giving him cupcakes with your chin in the air like that. Ugh.
It'd be a fun one
Uh,
though.
I don't disagree. I want to see him against. I want to see this Jared Gordon rematch. They've talked about it before. I think from a rankings perspective, they're still right there. They're still right next to each other at this point. So fuck it. Let's just let it happen, and we'll be done with it at that point.
I don't hate it. I don't know that Paddy would go for it, but yeah, I don't hate it.
I don't think he enjoyed himself in that fight.
What are you doing with Tony?
We're putting him out to pasture, my guy. I'm not here for it. I can't do it. I can't do it. It was super sad to watch. He's taken so honestly, man, since the Gaethje fight, I haven't really wanted to watch Tony get his ass beat anymore. That was the Gaethje fight was probably one of the hardest fights I've had to watch, and also equally one of the most beautiful performances I've ever seen in my life. Um, that was a rough one, and it hasn't gotten any better since then. So I think I'm done. I think I've officially jumped off that train, man.
So he's already said he's not retiring. Dana has said he wishes he would. I'm not sure how aggressive they will be pushing a guy like Tony out the door. Obviously, he's not the first, high level fighter they've had to take this approach with, so it's not like it's unheard of. But I would love it if they could convince him, we'll give you one more, you retire at UFC 300, and he gets to be on that card. One last check in a box for Tony to be on such a big card, and I'd put him across a vet such as a Jim Miller or a Clay Guida. I think either of those would be fitting final fights for Tony Ferguson.
Those make me sad. They just make me sad. Like I already imagined as soon as you said Jim Miller, like Jim Miller's gonna elbow him to death.
Miller's far more risky than Guida. Yeah.
Yeah,
The safer
yeah.
bet is to go Guida.
And then that fight just sounds like it's probably not going to be the most exciting fight.
Dude, it might be crazy. It might just
It
have
could be.
crazy scrambles and shit.
It could be. I don't know. I mean, have you? Every now and again, we see some of these situations where guys are at the top. I mean, they're just doing the damn thing. Interim title, 7-fight win streak, fucking everybody up. The boogeyman of the division, Hellbows and the like.
Yeah.
Wake up one day, tripped over a cord, blew his knee out. I think he had one fight after that, and then ever since then, man, just has not been the same. It has not been the Tony Ferguson we knew.
It is true. It is true.
I will say if it's age, time is a cruel bitch because that was not that long. Like, I mean,
dude, MMA, man, it goes fast. You hit 35, unless you're like heavyweight or light heavyweight. When you hit 35, you're running the risk right there. Like for a lot of guys, it just falls off a cliff.
it's wild, man. It's wild. It's almost like you have a car, gorgeous engine, and then just one day the shit just don't work no more. It just doesn't go above 40 miles an hour for no reason. It's sad.